So in studio we have Joe Pamper, he's the counselor here at the US Embassy, and Matthew Asada, who is the first secretary at the embassy as well. Thank you both for joining us and taking questions from everyone here. You know, before I start off, of course I know that this year's figures, Indian students of course make up a huge chunk, I believe, of the foreign students that are there in America. But this year's figures may not be in till much later. But there's one study that I picked up, which was there of the American Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions, which reports a drop of 26%. They surveyed educational institutions in the US, and they perceived a drop of applications that were coming from India. Is that something that you all have recognized as well?
We're in the middle of student visa season right now, so it's too soon for us to know, but it's not exactly a linear thing. I would say, I would focus on the fact that we have 166,000 Indian students studying in the States right now. They represent the second highest community of foreign students in the United States. 2 years ago, we had 100,000 students from India in the United States. So it's a huge growth over time.
Sure.
I would say not looking for month by month, but looking year or even years. I think we'll continue to, and we hope that there'll be continued increases of Indian students studying in the United States.
You know, as I was reading out, giving that introduction to the show right now, one realizes it's actually quite a mix of events, and when they're reported in the media, they do get highlighted. But when one looks at popular culture, because so much of popular culture really is based on emergence from America, and because of Netflix, all of us watch that, consume that. There's so much stand-up about what's happening there now politically and people's concerns. Do you recognize the fact that, you know, when we were speaking to a lot of the our audience members before the show as well, that there are concerns about the situation having changed from before?
I think it's always important to keep in mind that the first and foremost priority for any university administrator is to have a safe environment for students to learn. That's why they're going there. And so whether it's for American students, whether it's for international students, that's topmost in their minds. And I would note that while we've seen and heard about some of these real unfortunate attacks in the United States, I would note that none of these have been targeted at students themselves.
Right, because the one that became really highlighted, which was the one in Kansas of the 39-year-old techie, Srinivas Kochibotla, that was also someone, a professional, that was outside the campus. So you're trying to portray that, you know, campuses by themselves are safe.
Well, I think so. I mean, that's what, again, the university presidents are telling us when they come through here. That's what the students themselves that are on campus today. And it's been interesting. We've done actually sessions with current international students, even some that were coming back during the break, so halfway through the year. And they told us that, you know, the campuses are as safe today as they were yesterday. In fact, if not even more so, because the presidents want to ensure that there's a safe environment to learn.
I would also add to that, if I may. All of the events that we're reading about in the newspaper, they're terrible. Murder is awful. But we're reading about specific incidents, and I don't think we should, I don't think we can extrapolate from that, that because of specific incidents, that the whole country is not safe. In fact, the country is very welcoming. It's quite safe. Murder rates over the last 5 years have decreased, which is not to minimize these terrible events. Each and every crime is awful, and each and every one of them is being pursued by the authorities to the full extent of the US law.
Okay, so that's a safety concern, and I'm sure lots of our audience members would have questions about it before. I just wanted to clarify once, because I think what's really evinced a lot of political reaction here, a lot of industry reaction has been the one about H-1B visas. And I think a lot of why I bring it up here as well, because a lot of students who go there as well think of H-1B later on as an option, which will help them stay back and work as well. What would you like to say to students and to kind of address those fears or perceptions that people have about the H-1B?
Well, I would start by saying that students should be applying for student visas to get an education. We have 4,500 institutes of higher education in the United States, so there's an institution for everyone. Students who get an education in the United States get a top-class education. They create a network of alumni who will become professional colleagues throughout their careers, and they create a lifelong relationship with the United States. Speaking about H-1Bs, the President has asked the Attorney General, the Secretary of Labor, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and the Secretary of State to review our employment visas. That review has actually just begun. We don't know what it will lead to, nor do we know what will be done with the review. So right now the program is as it was. It's in place. Everyone who has an H-1B visa should be planning to go to do their 3 years of work in the United States. But for our students here, they should be focusing on education.
Sure, but you do recognize that culturally, many people look at it, the whole investment, because it's a lot of money that people invest there. People do have the long term mapped out and student loans and all of that to be mapped out. So it is something that people are looking at as well. And that's why you've had so many industry leaders. I mean, even the Google boss, he's talked about the H-1B policy. You wanted to tell us about how the recent developments have made you change your plans.
Father does not want me to go to your country for further education because of the recent crimes and murders and racism. Since Trump has been the president, it has actually increased. And that creates a fear in their mind, and they don't want to send me anymore.
What have they told you to do then?
They told me to start looking for a different country, but not US.
And you are now in class?
11th.
Class 11.
Yeah.
And so you are looking at
and
other
I
places.
planned for US.
So from a situation where I think India after China was the second highest thing, that you have his parents advising against it, what would you tell his father?
I would hope that your dad will reconsider. As I said, each and every one of those crimes that you have read about in the newspaper is awful. It's a crime. It's against the law. The police are pursuing it. But you can't extrapolate from that because of specific incidents that the entire country is in a different state. The United States is a very welcoming country. It's a nation of immigrants. We welcome foreigners. Certainly universities are amongst the safest places to be anywhere in the United States. The crime rates have fallen in the last number of years. Again, I am not minimizing these terrible incidents at all. Each and every one is awful. And each and every one, I hope we catch the perpetrators, and I hope that they are pursued to the extent of the law. But your father shouldn't extrapolate from that about studying in the United States.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And I would just say, too, is that what has been very useful sometimes is for parents to speak to other parents. And recently, at our Education USA Center here in New Delhi, it's one of our 7 official advising centers here in India, we had a session where parents of prospective students could meet with parents of existing students. And they talked about some of these concerns. And I think that's a very legitimate concern for a parent to have. And I would say that try to get as much information as you can so that your family can make an informed decision.
Can you clarify on whether the firearm thing on campus, because I know there's been lots of debate about, and there are differing laws or in different states about guns on campus. So could you clarify on that?
You know, I think it's one of the things about the United States that unfortunately there are homicides that are conducted with weapons. However, I would put this into perspective. Again, you always have to take a look at whether it's motor fatalities, whether it's unfortunate incidents that do have firearms. But again, the school is a very safe place, and the university does everything it can to make sure that the student has a welcoming environment. Some places that it might be possible, for instance, to have weapons in the environment of the university.
Right, and where should someone look for that? Because it's not something they would advertise on the prospectus,
no,
right?
No, but it's actually something that each university will have its own safety policy. It's something that you go to the website, check it out, and you can find out what the university's policies are, and you can learn about, again, what the city and state might have as well.
Okay, that's perhaps a really good idea to check out before you apply as well. Yeah, what did you want to say?
Hi, so I'm in 11th grade, and soon we're going to have to apply for universities after SAT scores. And well, in India, not every, especially for a girl child, not every parent would agree on sending their girl child abroad, overseas, for undergrad, and that's why in a lot of universities there's a preference for the girl child coming from India for overseas admission. But seeing the crime rates and racism towards Indians recently in 2016, as it was mentioned before we started the show. A lot of parents aren't willing to send their children for undergrad anymore, especially to US. Maybe not overseas, that's different. And I even came across an article where there's a 26% drop in undergrad applications to the US from Indians. How does your government plan on changing that, or what does your government plan on doing for fixing that?
Okay, the United States welcomes international students, both men and women, boys and girls. It benefits the universities to have foreign students, the diversity that they bring, their perspectives that they bring, but it also really benefits the student. It would benefit you. It will push you out of your comfort zone. It will put you will be the exotic one. People will want to learn about you and your culture and your country, and you'll also be learning about them. So it's a growth experience. You come back from a study abroad a changed person, and I would certainly encourage you to think of the United States as a possible destination for university, because it's a great place to get a really first-class education. You also create a network of professional colleagues, your fellow students, who will be your colleagues throughout your career. And you develop a lifelong affinity for the United States. We call former students citizen ambassadors. You asked about crime, and it's a really good question. The crimes that we've seen in the newspapers are horrible, and they're each and every one being pursued to the utmost extent of the law. We have a vigorous legal system in the United States, and those criminals will be caught and prosecuted. That's what the U.S. government is doing about these crimes, but there has not been an increase in crime. In fact, in the last 5 years, there's been a decrease in crime. The crimes that you're reading about are horrible and thus newsworthy. That's why they're in the headlines.
Tell me, yeah.
I just want to go back to as well that there's no explicit preference for either a boy or a girl. And I think what is important, the universities are determining their own admissions policies. But as my colleague Joe said, like, the diversity of the student body is so important. So again, if that means a more diverse perspective for gender, if it means a more diverse perspective for ethnicity or parts of India, I know that it's really important when we're looking at our exchange programs that we ensure that we have people from all across India, from all religious backgrounds. And so that whole of concept of diversity, that's going to be something that the university will consider, but there's no absolute preference. I want to make sure that our audience understands that.
Yeah, it sounded a little strange to me too, having a preference for girls. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't actually mean that there's an absolute preference towards females. It's just that not every Indian parent would send their daughter overseas for undergrad, and colleges would want to welcome females because, you know, it's not that common with Indians.
Okay.
And
Okay, next question, yeah.
So my question is not about the safety. There are many Indians who go for, who wants to pursue STEM, that's science, technology, engineering and mathematics. So there's an OPT period, that is a 3-year period after the graduation is done, which what I have heard and what I have read is being reduced for Indians and other nationalities as well. So won't that affect us? And like there are many students who come on who take huge loans. It will affect them as well, because that is the only time when they can work and they can pay the loan back. So won't that affect them, and won't that make us reluctant to come to US and study there?
We encourage people to go to the U.S. to study to get a good education, as we were talking about earlier. Some of the schools do have this practical training program, such as the one that you mentioned, optional practical training. So depending on the school that you get into and that you apply to, that will tell about what kind of program they have available. It differs from school to school, so I can't give a blanket statement. The programs are still in place, and if there are any changes in that, we will immediately transmit that information on our website. But there are no changes currently, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to speculate because I have no idea what may happen in the future. But right now, as we're sitting here, those programs are still in place. And so if that is of interest, you should look at schools, and you can get this information from one of the 7 Education USA centers in India. which of the schools that you're interested in have these programs available.
When does the final word on the review come out?
It has actually just started, so we have no idea how long it will take and what they'll even do with that review.
Right, but...
And it is important, too, to separate these two items. There's an H-1B process, and then there's the OPT. Again, they're not the same things, and oftentimes people club it together, but they're very different things.
And OPT is not under review.
Optional practical training is part of the student experience.
Right.
And again, that's not the H-1B review.
Okay, okay. Yeah, what was your question? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Vipin. I have done MBA. Now I'm planning to go for some management course in your country, and thereafter I want to start a business over there. Means how to get it done. Can you please guide me for that?
To start a business in the United States?
First I want to go for management course over there, and thereafter business.
Okay. First of all, I think it's great. Good luck with all of that. You would identify a school that had a course of interest, and you would get accepted. You'd get an I-20. You would apply for the visa. Long term, if you're interested in starting a business, you would need to get it up and running, and then you would need to apply for some sort of a temporary worker visa to manage that business.
The fact there is no, sorry, just to get back to, because I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about that H-1B review. The fact that we don't know when the final word is going to be in isn't something that discourages people, or just to have an uncertainty in the air? Because what if people are planning for the future, in which, you know, for education or career purposes?
I would look at it this way, is that when you're deciding to go to the United States for undergraduate education, that's going to be a 4-year program. You're not going to be thinking about H-1B visa until pretty far in the future. And so again, that might be in another administration. The rules may change by then. So I think that when you're thinking about
if they're thinking about their post-graduation?
Even then, again, a 2-year degree, a master's program in the United States, it's still going to be some time. You're going to have a much better sense of what the rules and regulations are kind of coming out of it. But right now, again, the underlying product hasn't changed. And I would just echo what Joe had said before, is that this is return on investment. This is a long-term investment. We're not looking at a 5-year payback. As Joe mentioned, this is a lifelong engagement with the United States.
My name is Sushil, and I just want to know, this particular court Make in America, how is it going to affect Indians? How should we take it exactly? Because whenever this particular statement comes from any country, usually it affects the different countries, means other countries. It has been found. So
well, I would just kind of turn it around to you. You have a Make in India slogan yourself. And so I think what we're trying to do is that recognize that each country is going to want to ensure that there are employment opportunities for their citizens, that investment is being driven. So we're really looking at places that we can collaborate together. And so students from India coming to the United States, studying, you know, starting businesses, contributing to the economic fabric of America, that's great. They might come back here to India. Again, there's many Indians or even Indian Americans that have decided to come back and to invest here in India. So again, I think we should think about these programs as a way to help develop both our countries' economic systems.
Okay,
same
quickly,
concern. See, basically you said that we do have Make in India, it's cool. But seriously, it means I'm just asking the policies to make that implemented in any particular country. So India is a soft nation, but I'm not sure about America.
Okay.
Well, I would say it's not a zero-sum game. And each country is promoting the welfare of its citizens. Every country promotes the welfare of its citizens. But that doesn't mean it has to be to the detriment of other citizens. There's enough work and enough education and enough people and enough profession to go around for all of us.
Okay, what's your question?
My name is Rahul. As you know, like, we don't really have a very good perception of the H-1B visa. And now, like, I just read in some newspaper that they said that if you are applying for the H-1B visa, you have to give your Facebook as well as Twitter password. So how is this going to help you? How is this going to help the American government know our Facebook and password, our Facebook passwords?
Every country in the world, one of its goals is to protect its borders. We in the consular world do our best to facilitate legitimate international travel and to thwart the other kind of travel, catch the bad guys. So every country will use whatever tools are at its disposal to do both of those things, to facilitate legitimate travel and to identify and stop malified travelers.
Yeah, you want to have a follow-up question? Yeah.
So if some criminal activity happens in the US and a person applying for the H-1B visa posts on his Facebook like he goes against the American government of the recent event that happened, so will you cancel his visa? Or will you start accusing him of doing all this?
That's a tricky question.
That's a very speculative question, and there are all sorts of things in there that are quite hypothetical. We would need to take each case as it comes to us.
But the social media passport thing is obviously a new measure that's been introduced now, because, I mean, we've heard about people's social media profiles being something that's looked at by prospective employers, but here for a visa as well, it's being looked at.
We use a variety of tools to assess the bona fides of any candidate for any kind of a visa. And
Okay.
that's really as far as I can go.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. No, I just wanted to ask you, when, you know, one of these Indian communities in the US, they posted a few do's and don'ts for Indians coming to the US, and it read very, it made interesting reading for me, and I just wanted you to comment on it. One of the things that they said was, do not get into an argument. I'll read them out and then you comment. Do not get into an argument with others at public places. Should someone be provoking you, avoid confronting, and please leave the place immediately. As much as we love talking in our mother tongue, it can often be misconstrued. What do you think of these rules, which sound really paranoid to me? Is this actually
I've not heard this
practically good
before.
advice?
I would say that it's probably always a good idea not to get into a bar fight. Yeah, sure. It's probably a good idea not to pick a fight with a stranger. Sure.
Yeah.
I think that sounds a little extreme. I think that when one is anywhere in any country, your own or a foreign country, one should behave oneself with courtesy and respect to those around them.
Sure.
I don't think there's a need to muffle what one says, but I think that one should use common sense.
One thing that I think universities do a pretty good job of is preparing their students for studying in the United States. So actually, before you start or when you arrive, they'll go through and say, hey, these are some things about studying in the United States. These are some cultural norms. These are some things to expect.
Yeah.
I did something similar when I studied abroad in Germany before I went to study in London. And it's just a good practice. You want to try to find out about your culture. I mean, even before we came here as American diplomats to India, we wanted to know a little bit more about your country, a little bit more about your background and your practices to make sure that we were not doing something that would be viewed as culturally offensive.
That's correct.
Well, thank you so much for taking questions. I know it's a difficult time. These are tricky questions, especially when there's so much uncertainty, and you're both not politicians, so it's tough taking tough questions from students. Thank you very much, and also to our audience. And hopefully that answered a lot of your doubts that you may have had on the recent developments in the US. That's it on the show. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.